everyone, and welcome to Rosen Sports Sunday, live from our Channel 4 studios on this calm Sunday night after a wicked weekend of weather. It hasn't happened often, but the Gopher men's basketball team has won Big Ten championships. My favorite team was the Jim Dutcher coached 1982 squad. It was a special group, and the day they cut down the nets at Williams Arena, fans had really learned to love this team. From Daryl Mitchell to Randy Brewer, the 7'3" center from Lake City, Zeb Howell, sophomore Jim Peterson, Gary Cookie Holmes, and a hot shooting senior guard by the name of Trent Tucker, the Gophers captain. On March 6, 1982, the Gophers beat Ohio State 87-75, as you see, cutting down the nets, winning that Big Ten title. Look at that smile on that young man's face right there. Trent Tucker, the new athletic director of the Minneapolis City Conference, joins us in studio tonight. Double T, for me, that video seems like yesterday in many ways, interviewing you guys on the court. Great memories, great team, great lifelong friends for you.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we all came together after being together for 4 years. You know, in 1978, we came in as the #1 recruiting class in the country, and it took us 4 years to come together as a group to win the Big Ten championship.
There was no three-point shots in college basketball at that time. Have you ever done the math to figure out how many you would have made? Also, no early declaration for the NBA draft, so you were around for all 4 years.
You know, Daryl Mitchell and I, you know, we were the outside shooters for our team, but we had such a strong inside game. Yeah. And if the three-point shot would have been in the time we were playing, you know, he and I may have scored a few more points.
Just a few. You're being modest. Well, the New York Knicks then selected you in the first round, 6th overall in that 1982 draft. You did take part in, I think, the first three-point shooting contest in 1986. You ended up losing to a guy named Larry Bird.
Yes.
How did that happen?
You know, I'll tell you a funny story. You know, before the contest began, Larry Bird was walking around the locker room, and everybody was trying to say, "Larry, what you up to?" He says, "I'm just trying to figure out who's going to finish second."
I've heard that story. You were there to verify it. It's really true. Well, he backed it up. Not many guys also get a rule named after them, but you did. The Trent Tucker rule, established in 1990, established after you made a wild three-point shot right here with 0.1 seconds left in the game against the Bulls. They counted the shot, but then the NBA changed the rule, right?
They changed the rule after that shot. The play was designed for Patrick Ewing to get a lob pass going to the basket. But Michael Jordan, being the smart player that he was, he read the play. I knew Mark Jackson was up against the 5-second count. I came along the baseline up the sideline. He gave me a quick flick pass, and I turned and shot the ball as quickly as I could. So after that day, they decided that no man should be able to shoot the basketball within a tenth of a second. And then David Stern and his guys decided to change the rule.
So it makes now it's 0.3 needs to be on the clock, right? Yes. For a player to catch and shoot.
Right.
You had what? Bernard King, Bill Cartwright, Ernie Grunfeld. You had a star-studded before Patrick Ewing got there, right?
No, Patrick Ewing was on that team at that time.
He was there at the time. That's right. Well, you finished your NBA career in Chicago in 1992-93 season and a world championship, of course, with the Bulls. Their third straight. The last one played at Old Chicago Stadium. Phil Jackson, the coach, Michael Jordan, the star. Then he retired after that season. Eventually, of course, he came back after that as well. You got a chance to be around MJ for an entire season. What did you find out about him that you didn't know when you played against him with the Knicks?
Well, his work ethic. I mean, on a daily basis, he's a guy that, you know, that works very, very hard. He's not going to take any days off. You know, he and Scottie Pippen, they practice as hard as anyone on the team. And when your best player is willing to put in that time and that type of effort, it shows the great leadership, and it's much easier now for the rest of the guys to fall in line and follow his lead.
He was that good.
He was that good. He was that good.
Especially defensively. John Paxson, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, star-studded cast, to say the least. The inevitable comparisons this week, Trent, and listen, we all love to have those water cooler sports talks.
That's right.
Now that LeBron James has won his second straight NBA title, he has a ways to go, of course, to catch Jordan in a lot of ways. But is James clearly now the player of this generation? I
would say so. His name will always be in the conversations of being one of the all-time greats, and what he brings to the table on a nightly basis. A consistent game. I compare him more to Magic Johnson because he's willing to pass the ball first to help his teammates, you know, to see if he can get them involved. But his overall athletic ability and what he can do when the game is on the line is amazing.
But yet San Antonio was 28 seconds and a 5-point lead away from winning Game 6 and the NBA title. We would have been having a much different conversation tonight. But thanks to Ray Allen, that didn't happen. Getting it to a Game 7, and clearly LeBron took over Game 7 when the championship players are supposed to here.
Well, that's why when you put a team team together, you look for guys who can step up in big moments and make big-time plays. You know, Miami, they were able to get those offensive rebounds in the closing seconds of game number 6 to give them some extra chances. You know, Ray Allen knocks down a huge three-point shot to send the game into overtime. But as you got into game number 7, many people talked about Dwayne Wade and LeBron James being on fire. But what Shane Battier did in game number 7 by coming in and scoring 18 points off the bench, that was big time for the Heat.
We saw that shot that Tim Duncan missed that would have tied the game, and a rare display of emotion for Tim Duncan in that one. And is this the last, look at the hug afterwards, is this the last run for the Spurs big three of Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili? Obviously, Parker still has a long ways to go.
You know, Mark, it's going to be much tougher for them to get back to the finals because they have so much competition in front of them in the Western Conference, where Miami has a little bit easier road to get to a championship type situation, but they have so many good players. If those 3 guys can stay together and stay healthy, you know, I believe that Miami has a chance to win another championship next year.
And that's before anyone will turn a chance to go to free agency at that point. So you're going to go for a three-peat next year.
Well, you know, I felt like when this team came together, and if those guys could stay healthy and Pat Riley could find a way to bring in the right type of role players to fit what they like to do, this team should be the favorite to win every single year.
And they'll still be hungry for that. You know that LeBron will be. Right. The NBA draft is Thursday night. Your good friend Flip Saunders is back in charge of the Minnesota Timberwolves, this time not as the coach, but as a man who's making the decisions. Obviously, as you know, a shooting guard is maybe their top priority. If they stick at 9th overall, would you anticipate them taking one with that pick?
They would look to take one at that pick if he's there, but I believe they're in a situation now to take the best player available. We all know they need a wing player, a guy who can do some things, you know, 18 to 22 feet away from the basket. They need some three-point shooting for sure. And we've seen over the last few weeks how three-point shooting can be very, very important to any basketball team.
There's not really a clear-cut #1 pick this year. The Wolves obviously have Ricky Rubio to run the offense from the point guard. They have additioned a number of those shooting guards here the last couple of weeks, Trent. Contavious Caldwell-Pope of Georgia is the natural shooting guard, and he's one of those guys that I think they're pretty high on as well as we look at him.
Well, you know, they're going to look, you know, Flip has done a very good job of scouting these players, and he wants to bring in the right guy to fit their system. It's all about bringing the right people that can do the things that you like to do. And we've seen over the last week or so, San Antonio, they've always brought in the right type of people. Miami, under Pat Riley's leadership, they went out and found the right guys to play with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. So when you're trying to put that team together, see if you can make a playoff run, you have to bring in balance.
So if you look at it, whether it's him or C.J. McCollum, who from Lehigh was also here this past week, are they trying to fit them with what Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio, starting sort of with that nucleus of the team?
You know, Mark, when you talk about that too, girl, you want a guy who can shoot the ball from downtown and stretch the defense, but also you want some size. You want a guy who can play some defense as well, because when you look at the size of the 2 guys now, especially in the Western Conference, you're going to need somebody a little bit taller.
Well, you have to knock down three-point shots. Flip knows that, and that's why from his coaching experience, and Rick Adelman, I'm sure, will be deciding on that. The Wolves do have 2 first-round, 2 second-round picks. It's tough for any second-rounder to make a roster. Any chance the Wolves would switch it up and go for a Cody Zeller out of Indiana? I say that only because Flip was just gushing about him. Maybe it's just one of those ploys, but he's likely a top 10 pick, but again, doesn't seem to fit the biggest need for this team.
Right now, I think they're looking for someone who can give them some outside punch, but you can never pass up a big guy who has skill and talent. You know, you really don't know what they're going to do with Nikolai Pekovic because he's a restricted free agent. If he decides to go somewhere else because the money is too big for them to match, you might be looking for someone to come in and back him up if he decides to stay.
You watch Trevor Mbakwe play here a lot for Minnesota. He outplayed Zeller here. He's projected as a second rounder, and Flip has said it best. Listen, he is who he is. Defense, rebounding, and shot blocking, but can he earn a job in the NBA somewhere?
I believe he can. I mean, when you look at some of the guys who are making big-time money, you take a Tyson Chandler, a guy that's not really known for his scoring. You look at a guy like Kendrick Perkins, who's there in Oklahoma City for defense and rebounding. And if you bring that hunger and the desire, and if you can do some of the little things to help a team win, you just might find a spot on somebody's team.
Well, let's turn the page and talk about what Trent Tucker's doing. It's big responsibility. Your new challenge, athletic director of Minneapolis Public Schools. What excites you most, Trent, about the new job and your responsibilities here?
You know, I think being part of a larger school district like this, it gives me a chance to be a part of a team of people now that can affect many more kids on a larger scale. And I think the more we come together as a community, it's going to give us a chance to do what's right for the kids that we're trying to serve.
You talk about getting kids to be participating in sports, not about winning, but understanding what team sports in particular does for you. Is that what the sales job comes? Are you selling to parents, selling to kids? How does that process going to work for you?
Well, I believe that, when everyone is involved, everyone here is at stake. And the most important thing is, how do we get our kids to the next level? It's going to take a total team effort. No one man or one entity can do it by themselves. I was lucky enough to be a part of a championship team with the Chicago Bulls, and it took everybody coming together, people making sacrifices, to move the agenda forward. I believe in this district we have to do some of the same things.
You're going to be meeting with the school's athletic directors to get the summer months and understanding the changes. Look, listen, losing is tough. Minneapolis City Conference, they lose a lot. How do you convince kids to participate knowing they may have to go home and say, I don't want to keep going back because I keep losing all the time?
I think when you can keep good coaches in place, coaches have to build strong programs. Most kids are going to spend most of their time around their coaches, picking up things from them, learning things from them, so we can keep good coaches within our district. That's going to give us a chance to move to the next level.
And there are a lot of lessons in losing.
Yes.
Aren't there?
Losing is not about failure. It's about learning how to win.
Well, you have a great objective ahead of yourself, and Trent, we wish you the best of luck. I know you're going to do a bang-up job, and it's always good to see you.
Thanks,
Double T.
Mark. Good seeing you. Thanks,
I love the cutting down the nets in '82. You haven't changed a bit. The one and only Trent Tucker. Coming up later on Sports Sunday, the Twins made a pair of big moves today, calling up Kyle Gibson. He'll make his big leg debut when he starts Saturday's game and promoting phenom hitter Byron Buxton to Fort Myers. But first, the Vikings just wrapped up minicamp. The next time they take the field will be training camp in late July. We'll take stock of where things stand right now. We're coming up in just a minute here on Rosen Sports Sunday. Stay with us. And welcome back to Rosen Sports Sunday. We are pleased to have with us in studio the Vikings beat writer for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, Ben Gessling. Ben, welcome to the show. And how long have you been on the Vikings beat here in town?
This will going into year 2 here. I was covering the Wild and the Twins a little bit at the Pioneer Press before that, and shifted to the Vikings last season just in time to see the kind of Cinderella season and getting started with year 2 here in about a month.
And you've quickly discovered there really is never an off season for this team in terms of fan interest. You could probably write a story every day and there would be enough interest in it.
No question. Yeah. Blogging, tweeting, writing stuff for the website, writing stuff for the paper, it never stops, and there's always interest in whatever's going on.
That part of the business has really changed.
Yes, it has.
Has it not, with the tweeting and the blogging in particular to keep up with the fan base?
Yeah, and the nice part about it is for a sport like that and a team like the Vikings, there really is no limit to the appetite of it. So you can give fans as much as you have time to give them. It's just a question of trying to find a little time to be off in the summer as well.
Well, when the game, you need that. When the games begin for real in September, I doubt we will hear many references to the relevance of OTAs and mini camps. But from a writer's perspective, how do you approach giving fans information that they want out of it? And from your perspective, when you watch this stuff without pads on?
Well, it's hard because you do have to remember that they're not wearing pads, and there's no defenders, there's no Ndamukong Suh or Julius Peppers or Clay Matthews coming at Christian Ponder in these workouts, but you can see a little bit of his rapport with new receivers like Greg Jennings and Cordell Patterson. You can see how those guys work, but you have to kind of take all that and put it into perspective just because it's not close to what you're going to be seeing.
Well, and that's an interesting take because it starts with, this conversation does start with Ponder to a great extent, and there's been lots of positivity coming from his teammates. So our job is just to ask the question. If they say, hey, John Sullivan says he's reading defenses better than I've ever seen him, you're going to report that. I mean, is that generally speaking what you heard about Ponder a little bit this week?
You know, it was funny. There was a lot of kind of mixed opinions on Ponder, both from what the reporters saw and what people were saying. I mean, people felt like he was more confident, he was more willing to throw deep. He had a few deep balls that looked pretty impressive, a couple of Greg Jennings and one you see from Jerome Simpson here. But he also had some moments where he threw a number of interceptions, kind of made some mistakes that we saw from him in the past. So the key for him is going to be kind of limiting the mistakes that he's made in the past and making some of those plays like we saw at the end of the season come out more consistently.
Do you think from general manager Rick Spielman to head coach Leslie Frazier, the idea of picking up Matt Castle is here as a bona fide backup and that he's ready to step in as opposed to what happened last year when out of an emergency Joe Webb was thrust into the playoff game with disastrous results as expected? Yeah,
I think that really opened their eyes to a lot of things. Number one, to have a quarterback that can run the same offense as Christian Ponder, which Joe Webb really couldn't do. But number two, just to have somebody that you can trust if you get in that situation. Again, Matt Castle has been a Pro Bowler in the past. He's struggled a little bit in the last few years, but he's a guy that's shown he can come off the bench. He obviously replaced Tom Brady in New England. So he's a guy that's been in that role and a guy that they feel like they can trust there.
And I don't care who you talk to. Again, it's Aaron Rodgers, it's Jay Cutler. Go through the list of quarterbacks in the NFC. Ponder has to be able to win games with his brain, his arm, his decision-making, and otherwise the Vikings are not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk all you want about Adrian Peterson, and we certainly have, and we will again. But I mean, you saw it last year, that teams will start to key on Adrian Peterson, and obviously with a full offseason to kind of prepare for him even more, the Vikings have to move forward with more balance.
Well, that's a good point, because anyone who watched the team last year knew how limited they were in their receiving core, especially after Percy Harvin was injured. We know Harvin's in Seattle. They signed Greg Jennings. They moved up in the draft. They drafted Cordero Patterson, Jerome Simpson. They got Pro Bowl tight end Kyle Rudolph. The talent seems to be there, but can Greg Jennings develop that chemistry with Ponder and the trust factor that you have to have?
Well, I think so. I mean, he's been a guy that obviously has played with Brett Favre. He's played with Aaron Rodgers. So if anybody's going to be able to give Christian Ponder some pointers in terms of here's what elite quarterbacks do, here's a level you need to get to, he's a guy that can do that. And Greg Jennings is the kind of receiver that he's a perfectionist, he's a tactician, he's a route runner. So he's exactly what they need, in my opinion.
Cordero Patterson wears number 84 in honor of his guy, Randy Moss. But let's take a deep breath here, folks. No one will likely touch the Super Freak's impact his rookie year yet. They moved up in the first round, not this guy to sit on the sidelines.
No, I mean, I think you talk about Randy Moss, there's obviously comparisons there, but you can make some comparisons to Percy Harvin too, just in the sense of the versatility that he has. He's a guy that's been a kick returner, a punt returner. He had a touchdown out of the backfield last year, and he's of course been a receiver. So you see that kind of versatility, you see the athleticism. It's a rare combination. That's why they went up to get him.
We saw a little bit of video at the end there of Joe Webb. I mean, he's making the transition back to wide receiver. Does he have a chance to make this roster?
You know, I think he does. I mean, if only because his athleticism is something you've seen at quarterback, but you get a better sense of it at receiver and as a kick returner. I mean, that position is going to be open with Percy Harvin gone, so it's Cordero Patterson that's going to be in that mix, but Joe Webb could factor in there as well. There's a few spots where he has a chance to make an impact as a receiver and as a guy on special teams.
The Vikings do have, as we all know, the reigning league MVP and running back Adrian Peterson. Simply amazing. We all know that, but this is a pass-happy league. Should the Vikings be talking really about lessening the load on AP if they want to win more games, following the logic here of saying they've got to open up the game a little bit more if they want to compete with the elite teams? Yeah,
and if you look at what it's been a passers league. There haven't been teams that have run the ball as much and has been as dependent on their running game as the Vikings that have done well in the last few years, or at least have gone deep enough into the playoffs to make some noise. So, yeah, Adrian Peterson's a great weapon to have, but what he does for you besides running the ball is he opens up other things, and you have to have a guy that can take advantage of that, and they feel like they've put enough weapons around Christian Ponder to do that. Now it's on him to carry through.
Now, he's talked about doing more of this, catching more passes. You think to yourself, what a nightmare for any linebacker to try to stick with Adrian Peterson coming out of the backfield. He's a supreme athlete. He can catch the football, I would think.
Yeah, and he's a guy that, I mean, you look at him, I think of those last couple Packers games you saw last year, you had guys in the defensive backfield that wanted no part of tackling this guy. When you get him in the open field with his speed and his willingness to knock people over, you think he'd be a weapon there. They have talked about that over the years. I think different coaches have had different philosophies on that, but if he can add that part to his game, yeah, it's certainly another way to use him. He's their best player, and why wouldn't you want the ball in his hands?
You want to keep it fresh in December and January. You talk about breaking all the records, but few teams go into the season talking about the running game and how good it's going to be, and that's the difference between the Vikings when they have a weapon like Adrian Peterson and most of the other elite teams in the league. But I don't think anyone's unhappy they have that number 28 in the backfield.
No, not at all. I mean, he's a guy that is pretty rare in the sense of what he can do and his determination to be the best. And when you have that kind of a player, no matter what position he's at, it's certainly a great asset to have.
Let's flip to the defensive side. Kevin Williams, Jared Allen, the main holdover, supplemented by rookie Sharif Floyd. They like what they saw of him as a first-round pick. He seems to be determined to say maybe the other teams passed on me. I'm going to show you kind of attitude. Yeah, and he's got an interesting story kind of coming up. It's a little bit like what you hear from Michael Orr in The Blind Side. He was a guy that grew up in a pretty rough background in Philadelphia and had some people that took an interest in him. His guidance counselor at school, I think he was sleeping on his couch a little bit. I mean, just people that helped him get to a point where he could get on the radar of college football teams. But so he's an interesting guy, just a guy that's pretty self-assured because he's had to go through some adversity. But he's also a guy that can help out at that three-technique position that Kevin Williams plays. You'll probably see him spell Kevin Williams a little bit in a rotation, and he's a guy I think that they look for big things from him pretty quickly. The linebacker position seems to be a little thin. Aaron Henderson's taking it personally when anyone suggests he shouldn't be the starting middle linebacker, and it is his job right now. Desmond Bishop released by Green Bay. He visited here. What do you think the chances are the Vikings will sign him? Well, I think it's going to come down to if they can make a better offer than a few other teams. And Desmond Bishop is a guy that, when he's been at the top of his game in Green Bay, has been one of the best linebackers in the league. So Kansas City has been interested. I think the Giants have been interested as well. I mean, Aaron Henderson is an option there, but he may not be the best option. No matter how he feels about that, the Vikings have to take a look at it. And I think if they can sign Desmond Bishop, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's the starter there. I think all football players have to have that insecurity, at the same time personal pride, to say, wait a minute, this is my job. And then we look at Chad Greenway, who's coming off arthroscopic knee surgery, but he said he'll be fine for the start of the season. But getting back to Aaron, I mean, I think, well, come and get it. I mean, right? That's the way his attitude. And that's what if you're a coach, that's what you want from your players.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want a guy that's just going to say, here, go ahead, you can have it. I mean, I always kind of go back with that to what Brett Favre said about that. He never forgot the fact that he got his job because somebody else got hurt, and he was always kind of looking over his shoulder to say, nobody's going to take this. That's why I'm not going to come off the field. So, I mean, there's a little bit of that mentality with any athlete, and coaches certainly like to see that.
Rick Spielman's been big about talking about having the right character guys on this football team. We know well, listen, just look at the news these days. I mean, the NFL's a roughneck league. Yeah. We know that. At the same time, you want guys who can win. I mean, you want talented players who can win. At the same time, you want character guys. You've seen that transformation within the ranks during Winter Park when everybody showed up pretty much to volunteer to come to these camps.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big priority, both for Rick Spielman and Leslie Frazier. I think that's something that they both put a big emphasis on, both in guys that they bring in as free agents and guys that they draft. They want to build that culture, and I think that was a lot of why they were able to do what they did last year. It wasn't the most talented roster in the world, but it was a group of guys that kind of believed in the mission, believed in what Leslie Frazier was saying, and were able to take it to a level that most people thought they weren't going to go to. So if you get everybody that buys into that, you can kind of weed a lot of stuff out and eliminate a lot of headaches for yourself, like what we've seen with the Patriots lately, for example.
Can you close your eyes right now and see the dorm rooms and everything in Mankato right now? They're all familiar sights and sounds. I know I can. It'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, it's only a month away, and the funny thing is they're blowing up that dorm.
I know they are.
They've always been in. I don't think there are going to be a lot of players that are going to be crying too much about not having to be there. But yeah, it's only a month away. We're not far from it.
They may have to ride their bikes a little further.
Yes,
that's about it.
Yes.
Ben, thanks so much for coming in and giving us your insights tonight. I look forward to chatting with you as the season goes on as well. Well, as you know, the Twins announced a couple of minor league moves today that weren't exactly minor. Kyle Gibson's coming up to make his big league debut Saturday, and Byron Buxton is headed to Fort Myers. We'll touch on that coming up next. Stay with us. Yes, right-hander Kyle Gibson will join the Twins in Miami on Tuesday. One would assume they'll just take a breath and start working with pitching coach Rick Anderson as he gets ready to make his major league debut next Saturday afternoon at home against the Kansas City Royals. Pretty good marketing strategy, sure to produce some active advance ticket sales for that one. No, he's not coming to the Twins with Gibson, but center field phenom Byron Buxton is getting a promotion from their Cedar Rapids farm team to the Fort Myers Miracle, where Doug Minkiewicz is managing. We all know what kind of a high ceiling this young man has in the future for the Minnesota Twins. We'll be right back to wrap things up. Stay with us. Oh, just enough time to thank you for watching Rosen Sports Sunday. We'll be back again next week following the news. Until then, good night, everyone.